So in this video, we're gonna give you some updates on some of the improvements and changes we've made to the farm in the recent months. And then we'll also give you a nice in detail part where we show you how we are starting all our seedlings and how you can do the same in your greenhouse to be ready for the spring. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. So as you can see in here, this greenhouse is filling up with a lot of little seedlings already. And we haven't even finished planting all the seeds that we're planning to plant this year. So the lesson we learned last year is that we need more space, and then we need it early on. So what we did is we added more space at the back of this greenhouse and made an addition to this greenhouse. So come along and let's go check out that addition. Okay, so here you can see the new addition all around us. And as you can see, it's filling up pretty fast. We started in the winter already so that when this space is needed, it's all ready to go. And thankfully, we got it just on time. So when we ran out of space in the small greenhouse, we were able to move things up here. And I'm very glad that we have this space now. Another thing that we're doing with this new addition is that we're keeping the climate somewhat cooler, especially during the night. So plants like the onions, or cabbage, or other brassicas and herbs that can handle cooler temperatures overnight, they stay in here quite soon, and they will do a lot better than in the hothouse, so to speak. And then in the warmer part, we keep things that need it warm during the night. So we're saving a lot on heating costs here by just running it cooler. And that's something that's nice since we have the wall in the middle. In order for us to pull up the plastic and be able to stretch it nice and tight, we did that at the warmest time of the day. We made sure there's no wind and there's a couple extra people here to help. And that really helped to get the greenhouse plastic on without any trouble, even though it's still late winter, early spring. Another thing that's important is that when you build the greenhouse, you get a level base and you don't have too much snow or ice there, because if that melts, that can also change the level of the greenhouse and maybe make it not so straight anymore. Ideally, this greenhouse would be built when there's no snow on the ground, but we had to actually excavate the snow away, level the ground, and then build it during the warmer parts of the days to be able to get it ready on time, because the fall was very busy with harvest. Now I'm going to take you to the big greenhouse. This is the big greenhouse. Let's go inside and have a look. So here is where we grew a lot of our nice crops last year, our tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, eggplant, and so forth. They did really well, and when the season was over, we took all the plants out, cleaned up in here, and it was just kind of quiet in here for the winter. Soon our plants will be ready to come in here, and as soon as they're big enough, we will be bringing them here and planting them in the ground here, and then we'll have a nice new crop here this year, God willing. Another thing that I would like to show you today is where we store our root crops and some of the other crops that are storable, and that would be at the root cellar. So let me take you there and let's go have a look at that. Welcome to the root cellar. We finally got here. This is the root cellar that we built here at Amazing Discoveries. I'm gonna show you a few things that we have in here that have been storing for several months now. And then I'm also gonna give you a little bit of a background on how this project came about and how we built it and how we put it all together and where we're at now. So first up, I want to tell you about why we even have a root cellar. A root cellar is basically a building structure that's built deep enough in the ground so that when the winter comes, it doesn't freeze. It stays above freezing temperatures and it doesn't freeze all winter long because the soil gives temperature up, it gives warmth up, and if you're deep enough in the ground, it won't freeze. The other thing is that in the fall and in the spring, it will stay much cooler in here than outside when the sun is shining. And the root cellar can be a really good, helpful solution for storing different crops that you harvested off the field. A lot of your root crops, such as potatoes, cabbage can be in here as well, carrots, celery, even some of your other crops. We even had some onions in here, and they did pretty good for a while. This is a project that was something that we had never done before, and where we didn't really meet many people that had a lot of experience with it. So we did a bunch of research and tried to come up with a solution, and so far it's working out really well. Just to give you an idea, in Celsius, this temperature in here, since we finished the build last fall, the temperature has been right around 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, steady all winter long. And we get winters up here where it can be anywhere between right around freezing all the way to minus 48 Celsius. And the temperature stayed the same throughout the whole winter. In Fahrenheit, this would be somewhere around the 36 to 38 Fahrenheit mark. And it stayed steady like that, which is really amazing. This root cellar in the far corner is almost 15 feet underground. And on the front, it's almost level right out to the ground. It's kind of in a hillside. And it's been working really well so far. Now, one thing that's important is that all your doors are insulated well and that there's no big draft. And that you still have some way to ventilate, because there needs to be some fresh air intake and some air going out, so that if there's gases that build up from some plants breaking down, that these can go out. We've built 2 sets of doors and they have done a really good job this year. There might be some improvements we will make to get that better, but so far it's been working really well. There's 2 main things why I like a root cellar and why we built one here. One is that if you build it right for your type of operation and for your type of climate and soil conditions, the root cellar can run without electricity year round. So it doesn't need any AC cooling units, it doesn't need any heaters, nothing. Which is very good if you want to be self-supporting, if you want to be somewhat independent from the system. If there's a power outage, your root cellar won't get warm, it will just stay the same temperature. Another good thing about it is that the building cost is much lower than building a big building where you have a cooler space in it. And then adding the coolers to it would be quite expensive as well. So it's a little bit cheaper and it doesn't need electricity or any other inputs for heating or cooling. When we first started building this root cellar, we got an excavator here and started digging, and we found some big boulders and we just kept working along, digging out a big hole. The first thing that we looked for is that there is no groundwater in that depth, because if you're digging and you have groundwater filling up the next day, then it's probably not a good location for a root cellar. Thankfully, in this spot where we dug, there was no groundwater whatsoever. Even after 2 weeks of waiting, there was no water coming in, which is very good because it helps you to keep it from flooding and from filling up with water. The next thing that we looked for is that we have a good way to enter the root cellar, pretty much level ground, so that we can access it by wheelbarrow, by foot, or even with the tractor or quad or whatever equipment we bring in, to bring goods in and also be able to take them out when needed. Another thing we tried to make sure is that the sun doesn't burn right on the walls of the root cellar, so we built up the soil around it and piled up the soil so there's several meters of dirt against all the walls so that we have good insulation from the dirt. When we built this, we were looking at different options on how to build it, and we found that using concrete blocks could be a good solution for us because of the size and of the way how we're building it. Concrete blocks are basically blocks that you can put on top of each other and they interlock to each other. And that gave us the ability to build at times when it's freezing, because if you're pouring concrete and it's really cold, you have to put a bunch of additives in, you have to heat the concrete so it doesn't crack in the process of curing. So concrete blocks were a good solution for us because we can just lay them out even if it's cold, even if it's freezing in the night, and they won't get damaged because they cured already. Another thing was that we were able to stack them and build it kind of Lego so that our root cellar will be exactly how we want it, and if there was changes in the process, it would be easy to make those by just lifting blocks and then moving them where they need to be. So as we stacked up the blocks, we also secured the walls to the outside to make sure that if there was any pressure coming from the dirt outside, that those walls wouldn't just collapse, but they would actually be secured out into the anchors that are far out in the dirt. Once we got to the roof structure, there was quite a bit of calculations and thinking happening, because if you have a wide span, this root cellar has about 35 to 40 feet of span on the longest distance, and that's a long span. And normally you would cover a root cellar with several feet of dirt so that it stays nice insulated. However, over this span, it would be quite dangerous to put so much weight on top without a solid structure, and that would almost equal a structure of a bridge. So we decided not to put dirt on top of it because it would be too dangerous if it were ever to collapse. So what we did is we built a whole frame around the whole building on top, and we framed it with 2x10s so it's strong, and we insulated it and put vapor barrier on both sides of that, and then we crossed the other way and did the same thing with 2x10s again. So we basically have this much of insulated roof structure, and then on top of that we put just asphalt rolls for now because the winter came a bit faster than we expected. That was our solution for the first winter. Our long-term plan is to add another small building on top of the root cellar that won't be heated. It'll just be a cool building that's dry, and that building will be used to store dry goods such as all the seeds, beans, all the herbs, even the garlic, and probably the onions too, because they like it drier in storage. So we'll have that building as a buffer on top for dry storage that's still cool enough, and then down here will be the moisture where it's cold and where it's good for all the root crops and the things that need to stay moist when they're stored. So building this root cellar took a little bit more time than expected, like most projects, but I'm really happy that we got it done in the fall before all the crops had to go in here from the field. That was quite the process, and I'm really thankful how the temperature just kept steady all winter long. Now, this is only the first half of the year that we have it, so we will see how it goes in the summer, if it will keep cool or if it will start warming up. Hopefully, we'll be able to give you an update on that at some point in the future. But so far, it's working out really good. Now, I would like to show you some of the crops that are still storing in here and show you what they look like. So, I'm gonna start with the cabbage. And believe it or not, this cabbage was harvested over 6 months ago, and it is still solid, still good to use. Some of them leaves on the outside dried up a little bit and got wilty. Some of them have a little bit of mold on it here or there. But overall, this cabbage is good to use. We use it every day and it's excellent. Another thing that I would like to show you is our carrots. So we grew a decent bit of carrots and we harvested them by hand in the fall. And as you can see, they're not rotting, they're still solid. We're eating them quite frequently and they're really good tasting still. Now you can see that they have a couple leaves sprouting out, and that's partly because they know it's spring soon, but that's not really a bad thing. They're still really good to eat. Let's see what else we got here. I have some onions, 2 different varieties here. They're holding up really well too. Some of them have started sprouting, some of them got a little bit soft, but I guess that's part of life. These are really good still. I even have one that's cut here. And smells good. Let's make some pizza. All right, what else have we got here? We've got a bunch of potatoes. They're holding up good too. Some of them also know already that it's spring. But if you look, we got a red skinned one here. And then we have some yellow skinned ones and white fleshed ones. And yeah, they need to be washed, but those potatoes are really good still. 100% solid, hard, and really good to eat, which is amazing. I mean, without any input of electricity or heat or cooling, all this produce has stored really well, which is very nice. Another thing that not everyone might know here is leeks. They are part of the allium family, which is onions, leeks, garlic, all of them go in there. And these leeks are still very nice. They've just been in here in a tray openly, And they are storing well too, so that's really nice to see as well. There's many other crops that you can store in a root cellar. Most of them are root crops. Some crops that build like heads, like cabbage or something similar, can also store well in here. But then there's things that shouldn't be in a root cellar, like some things that need to stay dry, like beans, different seeds, even your garlic should be stored drier. The onions did okay, but they might just do as fine if they were in a drier climate, as long as it's cool as well. All right, one thing that I would like to mention as well in the root cellar is that it needs to be dark. There cannot be any light in the root cellar. There shouldn't be a window. If there's any pipes for ventilation, they have to be built in a way where there's no light coming in, because light will make plants start grow. It will make things go bad faster, and it will make things sprout and just take over. So it's very important that the root cellar is dark. What we did for that is we built 2 sets of doors with some hallway in between, and when they're both closed, it's absolutely dark in here, which is part of why things are lasting so long. Another thing is that you want a little bit of airflow and open it once in a while so the air is not just sitting and getting stale. And by airing it out once in a while for a few minutes, that can really help too, to keep things well and healthy in here. Now, as you can see, the root cellar is done enough that things have stored well over the winter, but there's still a lot of improvements that we want to make it even better and even more useful. And like I mentioned earlier, one of the things is that we want to add a building on top, so that instead of snow being on top, there will be a building on top that will keep the snow off the root cellar and off our ceiling. Another thing is that we want to put shelving in here, so things can be organized. Right now everything is on the floor and tarped, but as we build shelving in here, we can organize things, put things in trays, and keep it a little bit off the ground. It is helpful if you go check your crops quite frequently, and if anything goes bad, take it out, keep things clean, keep things organized, so that you're keeping the good things to stay good much longer, because if one starts rotting and it takes over, it can go pretty fast to take everything down. One more thing that I want to mention is our root cellar is quite big, but it doesn't have to be that big. If you want to build your own root cellar at home, it can be quite small, as long as you keep it dark and enough deep underneath the soil that there's no frost getting into it, and a good door that will keep the frost out. Then you can have a small root cellar and keep all your produce in there for quite a while over the winter, and that way you have a storage that will supply you fresh produce from your garden, even when the garden is sleeping in the winter. Alright, this is it. We're at the end of this video. I'm glad that you took some time to come along, see the updates that we have, maybe learn some new things for your gardening experience. If you like this video, please hit the like button, share it with other people, subscribe to our channel so we can grow this channel and so more people can see what's going on here at Amazing Discoveries. If you want to see more content from Amazing Discoveries, go online to adtv.watch and you'll see a lot more content that can be really interesting to you and maybe something helpful in your life. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.